So usually when we create a dynasty trust, so everything goes into that filter clause, make sure we don't overflow it. Most commonly, the distribution of the dynasty trust is to create an individual dynasty trust for the trustor's then living issue by representation, meaning all of the kids would get their inheritance inside of their own dynasty trust. And if one child passed away before the trustors, then their children would get their share in a dynasty trust. Another way we can do it, I have clients where they want to give some things to their grandkids. They want to send some things or part of their estate to their children and part directly to grandchildren. We could set it up where a percentage goes to your children in dynasty trust and a percentage to your grandchildren in the dynasty trust. Now you'll notice this language here says 50% to trustor's living children. So this living is a condition, meaning that the children have to be alive at that time. And same thing for the grandchildren. So 50% to the trustor's living grandchildren. Now, by adding this condition in there, saying the grandchildren have to be living, that defines the class and it also closes it. Because as long as the trustor's children are alive, they could always have grandchildren. The law calls it fertile octogenarian rule, meaning someone can always have children. And even though that might not physically be possible, you can always adopt someone. So if we say 50% to the trustor's living grandchildren, then however many grandchildren are living at that time would get a share, would get a dynasty trust. And we could divide it between all of the living grandchildren. So if we have dynasty trusts that go for the children and the grandchildren, the living grandchildren, so they're all defined. This case, there's one living grandchild and then two children. So under this scenario, 50% to the grandchildren, 50% to the children. So she would get, this grandchild would get 50% in her dynasty trust, and then 50% would be divided between these two children and their dynasty trust. So 25% each. The dynasty trust, usually I let the trustee or I let the child or the beneficiary become the trustee at age 35. So these kids are over that. So they could be the trustee immediately of their dynasty trust, but we would need someone else to manage things for this grandchild until she reaches the age of 35. Here's another option. So this one says 75% to a dynasty trust and 25% to what I'm calling a legacy trust. The dynasty trust is what we just saw. And here's what I'm calling a legacy trust. So this is a common request that I get, but they wanted to set aside a sum of money to be used by grandchildren that aren't even born yet. So this client, his children were all minors, so there's no grandchildren in the picture yet. But he wanted to create a plan where there's money set aside that could be used for grandchildren. So the first thing we have to do is decide who's going to manage this trust. Who's the trustee going to be? That's easy enough. We can choose someone for that. But we got to make it really clear for this trustee. So we're going to have to define the beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries of the trust? One way is possible where there could be a sum of money sitting here to be available once grandchildren are born. If we do it that way, when does the class close and how much is each beneficiary going to get? So we're going to define the beneficiaries. Let's say this trust was funded with $1 million. Who are the beneficiaries and when does the class close? And what can the beneficiaries receive? These are some of the challenges with designing a legacy trust. You know, do we want to keep it what I call a common pot trust where all the money is sitting in one place? Or do you want it to be to go into individual trust once the grandchildren are born? And then what can the trust be used for? Sometimes I've done these where it's education only, where they'll set aside a sum of money that can be used only for education. We close the class once usually we do it based upon the age of the trustor's children. So we say once their children reach a certain age, or if all the grandchildren are born, and I think it's unlikely that more grandchildren would be born, we can say the class closes once the youngest grandchild reaches a certain age. So if there's money in here that's to be used for education only, What happens if everyone goes to college, everyone's done with school, and there's still money in here? When is this trust going to end? What can they receive? HIMSS, health, education, maintenance, and support. This is what the IRS calls an ascertainable standard. And this is the common standard in most trusts of what beneficiaries can receive things for. But again, support and maintenance, that can be pretty broad. So what if a beneficiary wants to buy a house, or what if they want to start a business? Is the trust going to provide for those things? And if so, we got to make it really clear for the trustee and how they can use these funds. It's not that I don't like these legacy style trusts. They're just a lot more complicated. So that means extra fees. It means a lot more time and money to set this up. It also means a lot more time and money to administer these trusts. So usually it's my preference, when people want to divide between the kids and grandkids, I like doing something like this, where we'll send everything inside of a Dynasty trust that has the same terms for the children and grandchildren. It's just that the grandchildren, the younger beneficiaries, won't become the trustee until they reach a certain age. But the children and older beneficiaries, they can gain control of their share sooner. This is a much easier way to go. It's easier to set up, and it's easier to administer. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you don't have a will, go do one. I think you can do it in less than 15 minutes. You should time yourself, how long it takes you to do a will. So get your plan done today, start for free, or if you want to come see me and get more advanced, give us a call, or the phone number is 480-924-4424. See you next week.